name is Nicole. I'm a producer for the Remembering Them podcast. The podcast is a platform for people to share stories and memories of their loved ones who have passed away. The podcast was created in memory of Dad, Bob Cecil. May he rest in peace. Your host, Mark, Ryan, and Luke acknowledge the rich history and importance of storytelling within the indigenous culture.
My name is Jorgi Skeen, and I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which we meet here today. Today we're meeting in Meanjin, and those traditional owners are the Yagara and Turrbal people. And I'd also like to pay my respects to their elders, past, present and emerging, and acknowledge my people, the Gubbi Gubbi people, and extend that acknowledgement to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people listening in today.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back to the podcast. Just me this morning. And as you will all know, when one or both of my co-hosts are away, we get to discuss a possibly true, possibly untrue excuse while they are away. For anyone in Queensland, Australia, they will realise the Queensland Teachers Union, the Queensland teachers are currently on strike in our schools, or they were yesterday. Just over a few conditions around the conditions, their working conditions, pay, and so there was a number of things why they were striking. And that's also the reason why Luke and Ryan are away today. They are not because they are teachers, but they are striking over conditions, working conditions with the podcast. So I believe it'll only be the two of them on this strike. So let's see if we can come to an agreement and they'll be back for the next podcast episode. On to our clues for you, as always. Obviously, you won't have Luke or Ryan here to compete with today, but I'll still give the clues to where the city where our guest is from and see if you can guess at home where our guest is from. So clue number one, there is a building in this city completed in 1903, which was the first skyscraper in the world built with reinforced concrete, a major innovation in global architecture. So pause the podcast now if you want to have a guess, and I'll move on to question two. Clue two, sorry. Clue two is this city was established in 1842. It's one of the oldest operating, not the city. This observatory was established in 1842 in this city. It's one of the oldest operating observatories in the world, helping bring astronomy to the general public before it was widespread. That's your second clue. Clue number three, in 1853, this city was established as the first fully paid professional fire department in the United States. So we are in the United States of America. The three clues, 1903, first major skyscraper in the world, built with reinforced concrete, oldest operating observatories in the world, one of, and fully paid professional fire department in the US. So hopefully you've guessed this by now. If not, the city we are in is Cincinnati in Ohio. The Ingalls building, clue number one, is the building that was completed in 1903. And for your second clue, the Cincinnati Observatory is one of the oldest operating observatories in the world. Cincinnati is a historic river city in southwestern Ohio, known for its rich German history, vibrant art scenes, and distinctive 19th century architecture. Nestled along the Ohio River, it blends Midwest charm with cultural depth, hosting world-class institutions like the Cincinnati Symphony and renowned Cincinnati Zoo. Today's guest is a pediatrician married to an orthopedic surgeon and a parent of three. Their middle daughter, who is 13, currently in hospice with a rare progressive disease. They share their journey of balancing demanding medical careers, family life, and the emotional weight of caring for a terminally ill child, often just focusing on making it through each day. So our guest today from Cincinnati, Ohio is Tasha Faruqui. So welcome to the podcast, Remembering Them podcast officially, Tasha. Thank you very much for joining us all the way over from Cincinnati in Ohio.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate you having on. It's a one-on-one chat today. I've said in the intro the other two co-hosts, the boys are away today, so it's just you and I. If you'd like to start by telling us who we're talking about today, people would have got from the intro. It's a slightly different conversation to our regular conversations that we've had with people that have dealt with grief. But if you'd like to start by telling us who we're talking about today and what you're going through, I guess is a good start.
Sure. Thank you so much for giving me the space to do so. This may be a little bit more unique because I am talking about specifically my daughter, Soraya. And Soraya is 13 years old and she's actually still living. And really, what brings me on to this podcast is talking about this space of anticipatory grief. Now, Soraya is 13 years old. She has a rare genetic condition that has really taken us on a long journey where when she was born, we knew that something was not quite right. It kind of started with feeding issues. And really, that spun off to more symptoms, including delayed milestones, poor tone, and we did something called a swallow study when she was about 5 months old due to feeding issues and not being able to gain weight. And that's when we found out that she was aspirating, which means like the food was going into her lungs. And with those types of constellation of symptoms for little ones, it really can mean a whole lot of things as far as potential diagnosis. So really the first 3 years of her life was this medical odyssey of, what does she have? What is going on? And then we got to a point of realizing that we may never know what's going on, but she was actually gaining skills and doing well. And so, this mindset of like, oh my goodness, my baby is going to die to, okay, my baby's actually going to live, but her life will look differently and kind of creating that life and that future for her that is still unique and different than what I expected. But nonetheless, we had that like sigh of relief that she's going to be with us. Soraya has a G tube. She had issues with walking, so she had like little braces called AFOs. She still had poor muscle tone and kind of was doing her life in school and continuing on with therapies like OT and physical therapy and feeding therapy and occupational therapy. And around 2019, 2020, it was about when she was 9 years old, there was a big shift, and that shift was a symptom of fatigue. And when we looked further, we did something called a sleep study to kind of see how she was breathing. And when we found that her muscles along the chest wall were getting weaker, so much so that her study showed that she was hypoventilating. And so with that, that really required us to start her on what they call a BiPAP ventilator, like a non-invasive ventilator to help her breathe at night. But just with that big shift, it kind of took us on another like frame shift and thinking of like, what does this mean? We still didn't have a diagnosis, but we knew that this was a new symptom. And it took us, a little bit more on a journey of looking through the NIH and different places all over the world to try to find a diagnosis. And despite that time since then, her symptoms have just gotten worse, where she has required her ventilator even more so. Everything is kind of slowing down. She's unable to walk. Her muscles are getting weaker. We entered palliative care in 2023 and subsequently hospice. Now, I do just want to make the statement that hospice, at least in the United States and specifically for pediatrics, is quite more vague in the sense of like who goes into hospice. So many times in adult medicine, it's 6 months or less for a prognosis. And in pediatrics, it's not quite clear cut as far as the timeline. But for Soraya, we know things are slowing down, so much so that she is aware that she's dying. Our family is aware that she is dying. And these are conversations that we're having. And I think that what's really prompted me to kind of speak more about this topic is realizing once we entered hospice, and I don't know if I'm still at terms with it, but really had to even say out loud that there's nothing we can do to stop this. Just recently, actually, in the past couple weeks, we actually found the gene culprit for her symptoms. But in that information, there is still no cure and there's still no way to help her. And so, with that, is this space of losing things that she used to be able to do, losing the future that we had planned and replanned. And in this time, is a lot of grief and she's still living. And so that's really what brings me here today, in case there's anybody else that's in the space of having a loved one with a chronic, progressive, life-limiting illness. And whether you're a caregiver or just have such love for somebody that is in this space, then this might be something that you can relate to. And I think there needs to be more conversations about anticipatory grief.
So many questions. I don't even know where to start really, but I guess how have you as a family unit moved through the different um, shifts as you mentioned that you've had to with her different health, going onto one path and then it changing and now to where you are at the moment, given that there will be a time that she does unfortunately pass. And I also want to quickly mention how maybe it's a reflection of how you've been able to process things and prepare yourself and have that anticipatory um, build up or put yourself in that position to expect when that's going to come. Because when we were, Nicole was reaching out to you and talking about coming onto the podcast, one of your messages, I don't want to, I'm paraphrasing here, but you said, well, my daughter actually hasn't passed. Do you want to wait till after then? So to me, that was even just oh, you're quite, not that you're okay with it by any stretch, but you've somewhat processed what is going to happen, the inevitable.
I think first I would love to address just, language. I do think that there is, I mean, it still causes a visceral response when I say death
Yeah.
and dying. I also think it's particularly important to use those words when I think about Soraya's siblings. I want to be, and honestly speaking with Soraya, I want to be really clear on so I don't mislead and I'm honest. And so I think that even in correspondence, I just wanted to make sure that when I came on this podcast, if I'm one of, the few or one of the first of many that have somebody that's actively living, I wanted to make sure that my conversation is not misleading for those that are listening. Like, this is a remembering somebody. So why is she talking about somebody who's living? And so I think that is part of kind of what is important to our family and our value system is that honesty and that transparency. As far as, like, well, how did we get here? I will just say we're not there yet. I think that this whole process has really showed us that we're all evolving and we are moving in different spaces. I think one of the most important things that we've learned as a family that is allowing us to do our day to day is the acknowledgement that we process grief completely differently. I think if I tried to get everybody on the same page about everything, we would never get there. And I think we would just be spinning our wheels. I think the fact that we can respect and acknowledge that we do things differently is how we are still united in every what I call pivot of situations. I think that initially just in that medical odyssey of what does she have, I will preface, because I think it's important to mention this, that I'm a pediatrician and my husband's actually also a physician. As much as I wish I could separate that from my identity, I think that it gets cloudy. I think it all gets meshed together. And I do feel like our backgrounds in medicine almost gave us this false sense of having a superpower, that if there's anybody on this earth that is going to not only find a diagnosis for their child, but cure it and fix it. And I specifically use the words fix it very intentionally because my husband's a surgeon and that's what he does. And he, proudly fits that stereotype of a surgeon that just wants to have things very black and white and fix. And I think that that mindset was a whole process in itself where we had almost tunnel vision of if we can just get to it, then we can move on to our life. And that moving on is actually back on track to what we had imagined. And if anybody that has experienced grief in any way, you kind of know that grief kind of derails you, like it changes you. And I don't think that I have been understanding that until much recently that I am changing, and the person that I was in the first 3 years of her life is someone different than I am right now. And I also have not accepted who I am, but accepted that I will continue to change through this process. And I don't know what life will look like after she's gone, but I do know that I won't be who I am right now. So going back to your question as far as, how did we do it? How do we navigate it? I think that there are different subsets within the Faruqui Five, and that's what we call ourselves, with Soraya having two siblings and my husband and myself. I think initially, if you asked my oldest daughter, she had made the statement in that odyssey of figuring out what she has while then realizing and accepting that we may never know what she has and just enjoy having her, knowing that she's going to live, because that's the other thing, right? That living is winning. And in that mindset, my oldest daughter would say the way that our family functions is Soraya is the sun, and we are the planets that revolve around her. And that's not necessarily a loving, warm sentiment from a sibling, in the sense that I think that she really showed that we did have that tunnel vision, that we were so focused on Soraya that we were missing time, we were missing moments with our living children, with our living family members, just almost in a way to kind of fix this and get back on track. I think with the acceptance part, there are still challenges in just feeling isolated and experiencing something different than what you imagine, and having neurotypical children. I think there is grief along that whole path from all of us, that it's still not the life that we imagined. And so while Soraya, at that time, we imagined her having a long life, we were still grieving that child that we thought we were going to have. And the other two siblings were still grieving a neurotypical sibling. That doesn't mean that they didn't love Soraya, but that grief and that love were still coexisting. While that still seems very similar to where we're at now, there was really a hard shift. So even grieving the child that we thought we were going to have, the grief, but then realizing how much just everything changed when we realized that she was dying, in the sense of there's no saving. There's almost just savoring. And so from trying to save her to trying to savor the moments is where there was a big shift. And it was a conversation with our family of how are we going to live knowing that she is dying? That is the question that if anybody listening has, please share. I have not been able to find a guidebook. I have not been able to find resources, a community. I think having a child that has, I mean, now a known rare genetic condition is so isolating. I don't have this network of people or family that can help know what that feels like or even relate. And furthermore, having two medical professionals while two neurotypical children that are still swimming and dancing and still, expected to go to school and contribute to society and be kind and still grow. And how do you nurture everyone as a parent? And how do you hold space for everyone's feelings that are very different? In that time where we realized that she was going to have a limited life, the one mandatory commitment that all five of us had to make is having a therapist. And so we each have a separate therapist. And I think that has really helped in really identifying how different we cope. And so I can give you an example of that, where my husband still is very like practical and logical, and he really likes to have that sense of control in something that clearly we have no control over. But one of the things he likes to talk about, and sometimes it's right before bed, is, what will her funeral look like? Where will we do it? Should we be contacting places now? Should we get like a spreadsheet of prices? And for me, I can't do that. And I felt really guilty that I couldn't be that person for him. But with talking to my therapist, I realized those are the things that I can't talk about. And I specifically can't talk about them before bed. So I need jokes and humor before bed. I can't watch anything that has like violence or sad stories. And with those tools and me being able to communicate that with my husband, it's been really helpful. So he knows it's not that I don't want to be there for him, it's that I am not processing this grief this way. In the same regard, I may go to my oldest daughter's choir concert and I will hear her sing and I just sob. My husband's not crying, but I am just sobbing. And it is this immense gratitude for what my oldest child is able to do, even though all the other parents are necessarily sobbing like me, but I'm also experiencing grief. And I'm experiencing grief that Soraya won't ever have this moment. And so it's this duality that I am constantly carrying while watching Soraya lose ability. And so if you could think of a disease like ALS, where there's slow motor decline, but cognitively you're still there, so you have insight. It is really painful to watch her lose that ability to walk, to chew, to talk, to breathe, and to know that that's going to continue. And also the grief of watching your other children watch their sibling is gut-wrenching. It's unrelenting. It feels like it swallows me whole. And I have to keep going. And so this whole process is one that I have no idea what I'm doing, and I have no guidebook, and I don't know if I'm doing it right, and I don't know if there's a right way. But again, my mission is opportunity for conversation about it and sharing. So it might help anybody with any type of grief or loss.
So much to unpack there. I certainly don't know of a community, and I think that's part of the. I think the discussions that I've had there, there's most people have some sort of opportunity to have a community, which I certainly cannot sympathize with you there, how difficult that must be. You know, we've got people that have lost their mothers, and there's a specific community around that. There's just the whole grief community as a whole, I guess. But I certainly haven't come across um, people that are going through something like you and your family are going through. So I can just all I can do is appreciate what you're doing. I guess something that sticks out for me is it really gives me that, whilst I'm certainly not going through anything remotely close to what you are, it gives us that sense of gratitude with my two children around. Well, and I guess I can appreciate what your emotional reaction to your eldest singing, because I look at that now and I will live with this sense of, well, how lucky are we? Because I've heard your story that I do have two healthy, functioning children that can run and play and swallow and chew and all of those things. So I think what I would say to you is you're certainly helping a lot of people, well, probably the majority of people that aren't going through something that you're going through just by sharing your story. So thank you for that. I had a question for you around Soraya. You know, aside from the obvious health challenges, how would you describe her? What is she like?
This is a paid partnership with BetterHelp. Hey Luke and Ryan, life gets heavy sometimes, especially when grief hits. For me, that weight often shows up as anxiety.
Yeah, it's not always one big thing. Sometimes it's just life piling up, work, relationships, trying to hold it all together. Suddenly, I'm anxious and don't know why.
Totally. I used to think anxiety meant panic attacks, but for me, it's more like overthinking every choice or feeling like I'm never doing enough.
And it can even hit on good days. Out of nowhere, I'm spiraling over things that haven't even happened yet.
It's easy to feel alone in it, but you're not.
That's why we're talking about our paid partner, BetterHelp.
BetterHelp connects you with credentialed therapists who can help manage anxiety and more.
Most people go to BetterHelp for anxiety, and 69% feel better after just 6 weeks.
Getting started is simple. Fill out a quick questionnaire and get matched with a therapist. If it's not a fit, you can switch at any time.
Their support team is super responsive, and with over 7,000 reviews and a 4.3 Trustpilot rating, it's a platform you can count on.
So let BetterHelp help manage your anxiety so it doesn't manage you.
Click the link below or go to betterhelp.com/rememberingthem for 10% off your first month.
Soraya she's 13 and in many ways is a teenager. Personality-wise, throughout her whole life, she is spunky, she is vibrant, she is unfiltered, she is very straightforward. The things that kind of in line with her being a teenager, she loves getting her nails done, she loves fashion, she loves makeup. And there's no stopping her from manipulating her current situation to get what she wants. So, there's some very unconventional things that we do due to Soraya's request. So, one of the things has been like watching, TV 14 TV shows, which she's not 14 yet. And she says, well, if I don't make it to 14, like, when will I watch? I mean, can you argue that? Like,
She's got you
and
there. What do you do?
yes. And the same with swearing. So we've talked a lot about swearing and how, if it's an art in music, you're allowed to sing along, it's an expression, it's, freedom of speech. And she said, well, can I just use it in everyday language at home? And I said, when you're 18, she's like, Mom, I don't know if I'm going to make it till I'm 18. My life is going to be ending soon. And I say, you know what? Okay. And so again, these are just things that she has opened up my eyes to where I'm like, everything is like, why not? Why not? Why not? And I think it's just interesting specifically with the irony of my background in pediatrics and my job in guiding families in, parenting and health that my child is really, pushing the limits. But that is who Soraya is, and she is just has a way with connecting with people. She has a way with always leading with kindness, and she has this innate advocacy where I think this is also important for me to say. She wants me to speak about her. She wants me to share her story. And I think it's important to realize that, people who are in this situation, it doesn't mean that you have to speak publicly to make a difference. I think some people are very private, and I think that's what they need. And for us, it was really Soraya leading this in the sense of, I want you to go on social media. I want to help other people. I want people to know what it's like to live like this because maybe I can teach people how to be kind to one another. And even in my social media account, I was really reluctant, and it was really her that really wanted me to move forward. And so, everything that I post and all the videos have her permission. There's some things that I like can't believe she won't let me post, that it might be like just one fingernail design where I'm like, that you don't want me to post, but these like deep conversations about death and grief, she's like, oh yeah, that's fine. So I have learned so much from her, but that's Soraya in a nutshell. I also want, everyone to know that in these discussions, as far as, what she knows and how we tell her things are also all with her permission. And each child kind of has their own limit of how much they want to know and, how specific and what questions they want answered from Soraya's doctors. And so we try to meet them where they're at.
Well, thank you, Soraya, for giving you the permission almost, I guess, to come on and join us today. What an amazing human being to really want to touch other people and affect them in a way that is just so wise beyond her years. I cannot even fathom what an amazing person she is, this ray of sunshine. Do you have I mean, it'd be hard to pick one, I'm sure, but is there a memory or a story or something that you've done with Soraya that really stands out, whether it be, funny or, something that reflects her as a person?
I do. So in our time of her being in palliative care and hospice, we have created, like bucket lists for the whole family of like, what is it that you want to do? And we each kind of take turns or we kind of vote on, you know, okay, this is something the whole family can do. It's within financial, budget to do it. And so we've been doing that, with vacations and birthdays. And so for her, 13th birthday, she's always wanted like a giant fancy party. And I just knew with her fatigue level and her health that that might not be something that she can do. And she has become very aware of her own limitations and has done a good job of advocating for what she has her strength for and what she saves it for. And so when asking her, I know that you really wanted this big party, but I'm not sure if your body is up for that, even though your spirit is. What would you like to do that you think that you'd be able to handle? And she really thought about it and she said, I'd like to spend time with the drag queen. And it's and it's really because she was watching RuPaul's drag show because I
Right.
let her watch whatever she wanted. And I said, okay, do you want to go to a drag show? She goes, no. I want to get to know a drag queen. I want to know what their life is like. I want to know what they had to go through to become who they are. And I want to go shopping with them. Just one store, one shopping trip. And so I personally did not know any drag queens, nor did I have any connections, but I, went to social media and found Broccolia Spears in Cincinnati. And I'm just giving her a shout out because she took a chance on this mother who was like, hey,
What an odd request. Yeah.
right? I mean, Soraya has me doing things that I never thought I would do in every capacity. And I said, this may be too heavy. There's always this like sadness that you're putting this weight on somebody. I'm always honest. And I say she's in hospice. She really admires strength, performance, vibrancy of drag queens. She would love to spend time with you. She only does well during the day because she goes to bed at 6:30. Are you okay coming over? Then the next question is, do I need to perform? Am I reading a story time to kids? Is this a birthday party? And I say, nope, it's just the family and the caregivers. No story. Just hang out. And if you're okay with us transporting you, we would like to take you to a makeup store. And Broccoli was all in. And Soraya and Broccoli had a wonderful time. And they connected and they talked about Broccolia's life and, how her family felt about her being a drag queen and how she decided. And, did she feel like she fit in when she was growing up? And they did that in a span of 2 hours. And that's about all she could give. And I think that is a huge reflection of who Soraya is as a person. Like she can connect with any stranger and she just gets right to it. And I mean, I love her for that, but I hope that gives you an idea of what she's like.
Yeah, what a great story to reflect on. How will you and the family? This is really difficult because, obviously she's still living and you're still going through this process. Are there things that you're doing to create those memories and preserve a legacy, now and then even have you talked about what that looks like after it as well?
No, and I will just preface by saying that there's no question that is off limits because if there's anything that is too hard, of course I'll share. And I think that is noteworthy. What comes across maybe is like, oh my gosh, that will be too painful to answer. Please know that I will speak up. I think those are wonderful questions, and I can tell you that in the beginning of her journey with hospice, the way that we were going to remember her and kind of remember the five of us is doing these like really big things. We did Make a Wish and we had Soraya surf in Hawaii, and we've attended concerts, and in the time of music playing and us like crying together, we know that we are making these core memories. And as she's slowing down and unable to do these big moments, we are actually in another place of transition of exactly how can we create memories now. And we weren't anticipating this, right? Like we thought back then is as weak as she's going to be, but we haven't, even though we know that she is slowing down, we haven't wrapped our mind around how can we make these memories. And we just had a very deep conversation when we went on family vacation last week. And granted, we try to meet Soraya where she's at in planning this, but I think that her moving target of who she is physically is constantly changing, that we can't quite keep up. So we did a long road trip because we thought that would be easier to be able to stop frequently, not realizing that even stopping and getting her out of our mobility vehicle to a wheelchair, to the restroom, back, actually kind of wipes her out for the day. And I wasn't ready for that. And so when we got to our vacation rental, it was like everybody was sad. Soraya was sad that this trip, just the travel, was enough to like not get her to do anything. My oldest was sad realizing how different her health was than a year ago. And my youngest was sad because this vacation did not meet her expectation of what she was thinking to create memories, which would be meals out, shopping, heading to the beach. And so we had these kind of separate yet together conversations of like, what's it going to look like to create memories? And we decided that it's going to be just being in the same room together, that we're going to now look for glimmers. And so these are going to be like small moments that we used to call ordinary that now will be extraordinary. And so in a week-long vacation, we got Soraya to attend 2 dinners. And we really tried to soak that up. And within the first 3 minutes of sitting down, we took all the pictures, knowing that she would get tired very quickly. And in those first 3 minutes, like Soraya even said, this is the best day of my life. And to have her say that sitting at a restaurant and have that joy almost be as equal to her on a surfboard in Hawaii really put things in perspective. And so I think just coming off of that trip, we're continuing to have conversations. And I think that's really important in realizing that no one plan stays long enough for us to finally get settled in and be like, this is how we're going to make memories, because it's changing. And I'm also noticing the siblings' feelings towards the change also creates more change, in the sense that as she gets closer to losing more of her physical abilities, it's getting harder for the siblings to really connect. And I really think that is the self-preservation of, she's getting closer. If I get too close, it's going to just hurt more. And so really working with her siblings to, one, respect and honor what their boundaries are, and also making sure that they're intentional about the connection that they want, and what would they potentially have regrets about, and what can we do now to prevent that, while also not, as a parent, not feeling responsible for all of their choices, because we can't fix everything, and I can't protect them from regret, and they're also children. And so I think that is so challenging in our nuclear family. But just knowing that everything is fluid, everything is dynamic. And every day I ask them, are you doing the best that you can right now without breaking your heart? And if it's yes, then that's the best that you can do. And there should be no guilt. There should be no shame. Sometimes I'll say, have you given Soraya a hug today? Have you touched her? And if you can't do that, just tell her one part of your day. And so I do think that as we enter this decline, It may not seem like we have it all together. I think there's going to be ebbs and flows, and I think that acknowledging that that's okay also takes off some pressure. I will say with anticipatory grief, there is so much pressure. It's that initial feeling of live every day like it's your last can be pretty exhausting. And the pressure of let's make this birthday great because it's going to be her last. And while we don't know that, you feel that, and everything has so much pressure that you feel like if something goes wrong, you're messing it up. And so, like, the pressure that the siblings feel and we feel of, like, oh my gosh, how can we make this? And we've kind of let go of that and saying, are we doing the best that we can? And in this moment, do we feel connected? Do we feel loved? And are we respecting everybody where they're at in this process? And so there's even been a shift even in the past couple of years.
That makes sense. It sounds like just a constant shift, and not even over the years, but every day with how you're managing being a mom and being a parent and coming from your medical background, and then talking to Soraya and the other children, and even your husband, that you've just got so much going on that you're right. I don't think it's ever there's no right way to do it. There's no, as you said, there's no handbook. You just take every day as it is, and it sounds so cliche, but that's all you can really do.
I will
And
say about you mentioned, like her legacy and after she passes, we do use a lot of humor in our house. So the one thing that Soraya does is she'll say things like, well, when I die, I'm gonna like smack you on the bottom, or I'm gonna like, like do something silly like that. And so there are jokes about, what will she do when she's gone? How will she let us know? And my oldest is more comfortable talking about these things than my youngest, who's 10, and my oldest is 16. And so one of the things that they've talked about is like, oh, let's draw what your angel wings will look like. Let's talk about how you're going to come back to me. Like, will you be an animal? And what animal would you be? Will you be a butterfly? And so we talk a lot about connections and that how we will always be connected. And that is something that we all do. As far as her legacy, she really wanted me to write a book. And so I did that, and that book is coming out September 16th. And it is a story of, our life and our journey, but she also wants to help other families. And so, in that regard, that will be her legacy. And, all the book proceeds are actually going to nonprofit organizations that mean a lot to our family. And so that will be one way that we can kind of continue her legacy.
what's the name of the book, Tasha?
Keep Your Head Up. And it's a mother's story of chasing joy in the face of grief.
It's great. We'll certainly share that in our humble community when it comes out next month. That'll be great. How, I don't know, you've, I guess, given so much throughout our discussion already around advice, but if there's a piece or a couple of sentences, what advice would you give to someone going through anticipatory grief? And there will be, not specifically with your situation, because I think that'll be difficult to speak to directly to someone like that. But obviously, you have people with terminal diagnoses that they have to deal with, and generally that's a finite time, whether it be 12 months or 2 years or 6 months, whatever it might be. What sort of advice would you give to people going through that?
The Remembering Them podcast is supported by my legacy message. How do you want to be remembered? My legacy message provides a service that delivers a personalized keepsake video to your loved ones, often as a surprise after you pass. My legacy message: be remembered.
I think this may be something you already know in the sense that you have experience in grief. Something that's been hard for me to realize is that grief and joy can coexist, and to not feel guilty to feel joy. I think when you know that your loved one is dying and your extended family does, they may expect you to be a certain way. Maybe it's sad all the time. Maybe they don't know what to say because they know somebody's dying, so they avoid you altogether. That it's okay to do fun things. It's okay to experience joy. It's also okay to get respite. I think when you're caring so much and feeling so much, that there's a lot of stress and it impacts all of your relationships, that it's okay to do something to recharge. And I also, from a caregiver perspective, this has been really hard for me. And so again, it's something that may come across as very obvious, but I will say, if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of others. And while I say this all the time to my patients, my therapist has said this to me for so long, it's taken a really long time for me to understand that. And I think that has to do with this idea, if I can just get through it, if I can just kind of push through it, like, there's this delayed gratification and this mindset, if I can just like do this for X amount of years, that then, and I just think that there is no then, there's only now. And that's honestly what we're promised. And so do something good for yourself, and you can still be sad and you can be happy. So I know that that's compounded things, but that's really how I feel. I feel like there's just so many balls in the air and they all can be true. And so if anybody's in this situation, just know that all of it is okay and that you're not alone, because I think isolation is honestly the heaviest burden to carry in this process.
Great advice. I cannot add or anything to that. That's just amazing advice. And I think given how you and the family have handled this and you specifically as well, I think that just speaks to how well you're doing, even though, you might have, I have no doubt you're having different challenges daily around, am I doing the right thing, or how am I going to get through this? But you're doing fabulously, I'd just say. I have one more question for you for the main part of the podcast. It's a little bit, it's going to be different because your situation is so unique and so different to others that we've spoken to. Generally on the podcast, we normally ask our last question is if that person was in front of you today, how would you, reflect and what would you say to them? I guess for you in the journey that you're going through, if you knew, if I can say it this way, again, totally let me know if this is out of line, but if you knew like this was the last day and you've got Soraya in front of you, what would you say to her?
This is actually something I think about daily, and especially with her declining, I actually have made a point to say everything that I would say to her in this question actually on a daily basis. So I genuinely look at her, and it's not just like an I love you, but I intensely look at her and I say, I love you. And I also say, your body may be weak, your spirit is so strong. In order to create an impact in this world, it has nothing to do with the length of time that you're here. Your impact will always be here, and we will always be the Faruqui Five. Nothing will change that. And you are truly an angel. You have brought so much connection, and you are a gift to this world. I say that to her every day, but I don't do it in a memorized script. I do it in little bits and pieces throughout the day. And so when we're talking about like living every day like it's your last, in that regard, I say what I mean and I mean what I say so intentionally to her. I mean, obviously, I try to do that with everybody, but I also think that being in this space, you only have capacity to be like fully present for so many people. Uh, But I am grateful that I have her. So for those that don't have that person, I will say it's not too late, that if I truly believe what I'm saying, that even when Soraya is gone, I will continue to say that in my heart. And I am just grateful that I do have that opportunity and the ability to know that this is happening, and it's pushed me to say that. But it's also made me a lot more intentional in all relationships, just knowing that nothing is promised.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it certainly came across that way, that you're speaking from the heart daily, and I think it's a lesson that the general public can take in the relationships that they have every day. So thank you very much for sharing that. Thank you very much for coming on to the podcast and discussing your journey that you're currently on and will continue to be on for, as I hope, a long time.
I
But
hope so too.
yeah, yeah. So
Thank you. Thank you
thank
so much for shedding some light in this unique space that we're in.
So unique. Thank you, Tasha. I really appreciate it, and I have no doubt that you've helped someone out there listening to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, listeners, that was Tasha from Cincinnati in Ohio talking about Soraya and also her family as well. I certainly want to shed a light on, there's the Faruqui Five that are impacted by this. And we spoke. What you won't see in this outro is that Tasha and I spoke at length long after the Patreon chat as well, for another good 20 minutes, half an hour actually, about grief and how it's impacting the different people that I've spoken to, and her side of things with anticipatory grief, and how there's this connection to the grief community as a whole, and we continue to talk about the amazing person that Soraya is. So really appreciative of Tasha coming on and speaking about Soraya and sharing her story and the family story and the journey that they continue to be on, hopefully for a long time. But we know, unfortunately, that the inevitable is coming, but they live that every day, purposefully, which I will say. Just a reminder to jump on our Patreon and support the podcast. $6 a month US, approximately about $9 a month Australian, to get that exclusive content that we have with our guests. And Tasha and I spoke about how they've dealt with it from a medical profession perspective. We deep dove a little bit. I would say a little bit, because you can only dive so deep in 5-10 minutes into the actual gene. So for all of our listeners, TAOK1 is the specific gene if you want to go and do your own research into that. And again, I will apologize to Tasha in advance here, but I'll probably explain this quite poorly. But from my understanding, with Soraya, it's a mutation in the gene, in the fact that it's actually a complete deletion of this particular gene for Soraya, which is causing all of the health issues that she's having. And we also spoke about in the Patreon, not to completely give it away, but that how there's about 50 people in the world have this GTAOK1 gene mutation, and we believe that Soraya is the only one in the world with the complete deletion of that mutated gene. So hopefully I've somewhat explained that accurately, Tasha. And if we think about that on a global scale, out of 8 billion people, roughly in the world, Soraya being the only one, is just, the gravity of that is just mind blowing to me, that she's genuinely the only person in the world, potentially with this complete deletion, is amazing. Such an amazing story. So a reminder to jump on the Patreon if you want to listen to that slight deep dive into the gene mutation. We spoke more, again, about Soraya and the type of beautiful person she is, and how giving she is. So it's a way to support the podcast as well. So please jump on Patreon facebook.com/remembering them podcast. A reminder as well that we have the My Legacy Message service. And I, again, in the Patreon spoke to Tasha about that, where you can leave recorded video messages to your loved ones, often a surprise after they've passed, mylegacymessage.com.au. A reminder that we have the BetterHelp partnership, betterhelp.com/remembering them podcast for 10% off your first month with a credentialed therapist. And I throw back to the conversation with Tasha that that is a strong part of what they are helping them navigate this journey with Soraya, that each of the family members have their own therapist, which I think is a really good thing, and obviously helping them, I think, manage how they are coping in different ways. So that's a partnership that we truly believe in. So jump on there. And a reminder as well to follow us on all of our socials, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We're on all of those socials. And to share this episode. Please share this episode with anyone that you think it might help. They don't have to be expecting anticipatory grief, but it might be anyone in that grief space that might have that sense of gratitude from listening, or appreciation from listening to Soraya's story, the Faruqui Fives story, I should say, as a whole, because they're doing this wonderfully as a family. And for any previous episodes, for that matter, please share any of those episodes that you feel might help just one person out there. Thank you very much for your listenership. Thank you very much for Tasha coming onto the podcast and being so open and talking about their story and the journey they continue to be on. And big thank you to Soraya. I think Tasha mentioned that Soraya often gives her feedback on the different things that she's talking about, and presentations and lectures and everything else she's doing. But the big thank you to Soraya. Not sure if she'll hear this, but thank you for everything that you're giving to the world, through whether that be yourself and also through your family. I think you will touch a lot of people now and long into the future. So thank you very much for living and being here with us. Thank you again for your listenership. Look forward to the next conversation that we have on this podcast. Love you. Bye.
The Remembering Them podcast is created for entertainment purposes. Mark, Ryan, and Luke are not licensed mental health professionals. If you would like to discuss your mental well-being, several resources are available in Australia. Information about these services are available in the podcast notes. Please take the time to contact your loved one today and tell them how much you appreciate and love them.